Well, thank you all for coming out. This is a big day. This is a celebration for my mother. It came too early, not really ready for this, but it's so good to see all your faces. And for any of those of you who don't recognize me, I am Mom's favorite son and only son, and her favorite daughter, Allison. Anyway, as I was trying to get ready to talk, looking at all the things that Mom has done for me and all the neat adventures that we'd been on, going to Ashland, Jacksonville, getting dragged everywhere. It was that many of you know and are familiar with. But one of the things that really made Mom's life special was all of you. I see my cousins, I see aunts, uncles, her cousins, her travel partners, and just the best of friends, writing partners. And that's what really fulfilled Mom's life. She was a confidant, one who really enjoyed listening to others, although sometimes she didn't want to hear or have any empty space in a conversation, so she would fill that, as you probably all know. But it was the listening, the talking, the communicating that just, I think, really made her life special, and it touched her, and I hope she touched yours. Anyway, so much. It's so special to see you guys all here again. My sister's going to do a quick talk. Then we're going to go and have a video. It's 3 or 4 minute video. There's a couple people here who may need to move just a little bit so that they can see it as well.
We can play it again after lunch. I mean, once lunch is going, we'll let it stream.
Yeah. So yeah, and then after that, we will open it up. So anybody who would like to come in and talk and share, please feel free to do so. We'll be going to how long? 3, 4.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So there's food in the back. So we have the Olive Garden catering. So feel free to load up on food, crackers, cheese, drinks.
Everything but the booze. We don't have to booze.
Yeah, no booze. Not our decision. That's policy. So anyway, I will turn it over to Allison.
Okay. All right. Well done, Michael. I also wanted just to thank everybody for being here. Some come near and far, and from every direction and every part of Mom's life. She was complex. She had tons of people who loved her and tons of people she loved. And she made me promise. She says, I don't want a funeral. I want a celebration. I want happy people. I want the room filled with flowers, my friends, and food. And so that's what we try to do. And so I'm not going to try and tell who my mom was, because everybody here has their own special stories of who Mom was, but I thought I would share a story that happened, it wasn't very long ago. And so Mom was, she was definitely having her mobility issues, and she had to rely on a walker, and she couldn't get up very well, and her dementia was kicking in, and she wasn't remembering quite as well. And Mother's Day was coming, and I thought, well, I want to do something really special for her, but taking her out to lunch and done all those things. So I thought, I'll take her to my cabin, in Klamath Falls. And she always wanted to go, and so I did. And so I told her I didn't tell her where we're going. I just said, be ready. We're going on an adventure. And she said, oh, all right. And so I called her that morning on Mother's Day on my way over, and I said, and she answered the phone kind of groggy. I said, Mom, it's your day, aren't you ready? And she says, oh, I will be. And I thought, that's kind of weird. But so I drove over and pick her up, and she's waiting at the back door for me, just all all excited. And so we get her in the car and we start driving. She didn't ask where we're going. We're driving for like 2 hours, and she's going, oh, your car's beautiful. Look at the trees, you know, and taking it all in. And then she kind of figured out we were going to my cabin. And when I got there, I realized, I don't know if this is the smartest idea. It's remote. It has no power, has no cell phone service, you know, and no water, you know, and it's kind of a 4-wheel drive road. None of the ground's even. And I thought, oh, what have I done, you know? But she's so excited, and so we get out of the car, and she's able to, oh, that's all right. She's able to maneuver, and we get to the cabin door, and we both look, and it's got these two, enormous steps to get in the cabin. And I kind of look, and I go, oh, and she says, oh, I can do it. She goes, get that board over there, get that, make me a ramp. And so I go, okay, so I drug the board over and some cinder blocks, and we just hope for the best. And she got up into the cabin and oohed and awed and stuff. And then I said, well, I'm just going to make us some hamburgers. And she wanted to come back out and sit outside. And so we made the burgers. We had a great time, and pulled the board over so she could get into the outhouse and stuff. And now it's getting kind of late, and it dawned on me that I didn't tell Mike and Sharon that, you know, where we were going, and we've been gone all day and stuff. And so we head back, and first we pass this greasy little, gross little service station that I always stop out in Klamath Falls. And I said, I got a little special treat for you in this gas station. And so Mom's, oh, what could it be? And she's telling the lady who's pumping our gas, Happy Mother's Day, you know, in her true form. And so I went in, I came out with these cookies, ice cream sandwiches that were lemon cookies with lavender ice cream, coming from the most crazy spot in this greasy little gas station. And she loved them. So we get home, and I get her tucked in. It's dark now, and I notice there's no messages on the answer machine, and I'm thinking that's kind of weird. But so I get in my phone, and I get in my car, and on my phone I immediately call Mike, and I say, Mike, you haven't called Mom, you know, and she's home now. I'm sorry if you're worried. And, you know, he says, why? And I go, well, for Mother's Day, you better call her, and she's expecting your call. And he's like, today isn't Mother's Day. And he said, today's Saturday, Allison. How could you lose a day? You know? And so I'm like, what? It's Saturday. And I'm like, I don't know how I lost today, but anyway, so I call Mom immediately. I'm like, Mom, guess what? Like, today isn't Saturday. Today isn't Mother's Day. And she's like, I know. She goes, I knew all along. Why do you think I wasn't ready? You know, and I said, well, why didn't you say anything? We were saying Happy Mother's Day to everybody we passed, and, you know, and stuff. And you have the dementia. I'm supposed to be your caregiver. And she says, oh, well, you know, I didn't want to take your joy away. And I didn't want to pass up an opportunity to spend a whole day with you. She goes, it didn't matter. So that was my story about, and that didn't happen very long ago. So she was, we laughed about her, you know, her mental state and mine, you know. So I just wanted to share with you that story, because that's when I think of my mom. I think of her, you know. She was gung-ho for the adventure, and she loved each and every one of you, and each and every one of you has made this celebration, her last wish, completely amazing. You're all amazing, and Mike and I appreciate you guys coming so much, and thank you. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to be the first up at the microphone and share a story, feel free. Yeah. I can meet you in the middle. Everybody, Joanne Wilcox, one of Mom's favorite friends.
Oh, I was thinking today we met Pat and Rich probably 60 years ago. Oh, Donna knows the family longer than we do. But I wanted to just mention something that maybe some of you don't know. Our friend Pat, Jan Trowbridge, died recently. And before she died, I sent the obituary for Pat up to her. And her response was, I feel as though my pep squad is gone. And that's really what Pat was. She cheered all of us on, didn't she? So thank you. Where did you go? And Allison, this is beautiful. Oh. Pat would be so pleased.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Yes. Hey, how are you? Here you go.
Hi.
All yours.
Yeah, Kent Daughterman here. I've got a mask on because we got a family member who's just gone through chemo, so just trying to keep them safe. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So I've known Pat ever since about when I was 22 years old. My wife and I met in Peace Corps. We were both Peace Corps volunteers in Africa, and we were starting to go out and all that in Peace Corps, and she always had this pretty little necklace around her neck from Black Star, and I said, "Oh, who's that from?" What's that? And she goes, "Well, Pat KUHN gave this to me, and she said if I wore this, Black Star said this would always protect me throughout my whole life," and she still wears it today. So that's how I first got to know Pat. There's some funny stories about Pat and the family. She was a next door neighbor to Catherine and Adam, and Allison and Mike grew up together. They'd ride in the truck to go to school and all together, and Barbara and Pat were next door neighbors with Rich and Gordon. So I heard all these great stories. And but one of them that I always laughed about or chuckled about was back in the late 1960s, maybe early 1970s. There was kind of a lot of different thoughts out there on kind of, like UFOs and just all kinds of different things. And Pat and Barbara were always kind of really open-minded about trying different stuff. And I guess there was somebody somewhere up in the mountains that would kind of like talk with aliens and things like that. And they went up to this meeting. I think it was up in Ashland somewhere. And there was a group of people sitting around the table, and they brought Rich and Gordon along. And if any of you know Rich and Gordon, that maybe wasn't something they really believed strongly in. So there'd be people sitting around this area, and Pat and Barbara would be sitting around listening, and she'd be saying, "Okay, and Rich and Gordon would be standing around the edge of the room, I guess, kind of, maybe chuckling a bit and not maybe buying into the whole thing, but the person would be doing this, I don't know if it was a seance or whatever you want to call it, but trying to tune in to the aliens, and they're all listening real hard, and there's this chuckling and laughter going on in the background, and I guess Pat spoke up and goes, "I'm sorry if there's a lot of negative energy here, but they will." So anyway, I guess they had to leave. But that always made me laugh. But on a more serious note, I know in the family, Barbara always valued Pat. Pat used to be on the St. Mary's school board, and she went on the school board when St. Mary's was having a lot of financial issues and was, I guess, on the verge of closing down. And got Barbara to become principal down there. And Pat being on the board and Barbara, and then there was a lot of really good people, but St. Mary's really became kind of recovered with all that. So I think Pat played a big role in that. So she was always just doing lots of nice things, kind of under the radar. So I always appreciated her for that. And just...
Is there anybody else who'd like to come up and speak?
I have a little story.
Oh, yeah. Well, come on up. Come on up. You're the next contestant. There you are.
Hi, I'm Margie Leininger, and Pat and I were really good friends for 60 years from the time I met them at the Hillcrest Golf Course, and she and Susan McLaughlin said, "Do you play bridge?" And I said yes, and that was the beginning of a nice friendship. But I want you to know that Pat was not only civic-minded and philosophical, but she was also darn smart. And I want to give you an example of darn smart. When our kids had gone to college, Pat and I decided that it would be really nice if we went out to dinner on Valentine's Day with Greg and Rich, and we'd have a nice dinner at a Muse in Ashland. Very nice restaurant. Particularly good wine. That comes up later. So Did you know that Rich really hated to fly in airplanes? Yes. Apparently there was something about an airplane dropping out of the sky. Yeah, anyhow, that seemed to make him not want to fly. But Pat really wanted to travel. And so that particular Valentine's Day at Amuse in Ashland, over the second bottle of wine, Greg mentioned the fact that we were going to go to Germany that summer. And Pat said to Rich, well, Rich, maybe you could travel with Greg and then it would be okay. And Greg said, that would be really fun. And Rich said, yeah, I think I could do that. And because of Pat's clever mind, she and Rich and Greg and I traveled to Germany, to Italy, to France, to Ireland. And Greg always sat with Rich and I always sat with Pat. And we always giggled because she was smart and she did exactly what we hoped to do. I miss her terribly. Thank you.
So I've known Allison for, I figured it out, 43 years we've been friends. And I met Pat when I was 9 years old. And when I turned 17, I lost my mother. And she made it such a point to make every birthday, every Christmas so special. And I'd call her Mama Kuhn and I'd call Rich Papa Kuhn. And Papa Kuhn was allergic to seafood. Yeah. And even though he was allergic to seafood, he would go to a seafood restaurant because my favorite food is shrimp. And she would go, oh, Rich, you gotta go. And it just made every birthday so special because I had something to look forward to and someone who was looking out for me.
And Dad made her wear a crustacean on her head every birthday.
For those of you who don't know, my name is Don McLaughlin, and we knew the KUHN'S from early 1960s on. We were really great friends through almost our whole life. They became part of our family. Pat was always nice and stuff, and she was the godmother of our children and participated in the family. But the real reason I'm up here, we all liked Pat. She was a pretty lady and all that. But the problem was that she did have a temper. And you could get to her, and you'd have to be in the San Francisco Bay Area to understand totally, but she graduated from San Jose State, and we were in another school nearby, both Susan and I. We did not know one another at that time, but the rest of us in the San Francisco area, we referred to graduates of San Jose State, particularly the girls, because they were almost all universally really good looking, as the San Jose Dollies. And Pat hated that. And every time I wanted to get under her skin about something over the 60-some years that we were part of one another's family, is all I'd have to say is San Jose, and that's as far as she let me get. McLaughlin, knock it off. But and that's about the only thing I can remember through all the years where she would actually get angry and jump on me. But it was worth it.
My name's Mark LaRue. My father and Pat were first cousins, grew up in Walla Walla together. And as kids, we lived in Bellingham, and we'd come down to Medford on our way, and stay 3 or 4 days, and then head down to the Bay Area to visit the other cousins down there, the Brighams. And those were always fond memories. But as I got older, we stayed in touch with Pat as a cousin, and Rich, and Michael and Allison. And then when we had kids, one of our first thoughts for a godmother for our son here, Will, was Pat. It sounds like was the first person everybody else thought of too. But Pat, as you all know, and I don't have a particular story, but whatever she did, it was 100%. She was passionate. She was fun to be around. We had her up to our house a number of times. She related to the kids really easily. Just sort of one of those positive energy people in life. Very funny, very quick-witted, self-deprecating sense of humor. Just one of those wonderful people that I think in my life there won't be another. So anyway.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Oh.
So I'm Will Chin. My mother Donna was born in Walla Walla, where Pat was born, and I don't think they were friends early on, but somehow they grew up in the same community and they ended up in Medford, Oregon with husbands, raised their families. So Pat and Rich have been a fixture in my life since I was born. And very special woman. Pat was a passionate person, as was just echoed here. And one of the best qualities I think about Pat is that regardless of your politics, if she disagreed with you, it just wasn't an issue, right? It's just that's what you thought, and that was fine. And Pat held on to her beliefs, which were very near and dear. And at the very end, probably about 7, 8, 10 years ago, when my father wasn't doing very well, and Rich wasn't doing very well either, Mom hauled my dad over to Pat's house, I believe, and Pat was caring for Rich, and my dad, I believe, was in a walker or on crutches or something like that, and Rich wasn't very mobile, and true to form, Rich looks over at my dad and he said, "Want a race?" So there's so many good memories out there, and I will miss Pat, and she was a fixture in my life, so thank you.
Any more? Oh, okay. How are you doing, Sam?
My name's Sally, and I moved next door to Pat and Rich in 1986. And my husband at the time and I were really good friends with him. Rich and I shared birthdays that were near each other, and so we got to celebrate going out for dinner and Rich's martinis. But before that, Elaine Mosler lived across the street from Pat and Rich, and they really took care of her. She was a widower and had traveled the world and had this beautiful rose garden in the front, remember? And she struggled, and when she died, she was cremated, and Pat was in charge of what to do with the ashes. And we thought about what to do, and we decided to put Elaine in her rose garden. So one day we got Elaine's ashes and we put them in a Miracle Grow box, and we sneaked over to the yard pretending that we were just taking care of the roses, and secretly planted Elaine in the rose garden. So she's there forever. So that's one of my Pat stories.
Thank you, Sally. All right, Carly.
I'm Carly Carson. Callie is my maiden name. In fact, we were talking about the Chin's pool a little bit earlier. Aunt Pat was such an incredible woman. But the one thing that I will always take is that for each year on our birthday, we'd get, it was a very small gesture, token of love. But the most important to me was on my 16th birthday. And she sent me, wrapped in a leather strap, Anne-Marie Lipberg's gift from the sea. And in the card, she put, and I always thought this was very funny, an Isaac Dennison quote, which today is very, very appropriate. And it says, the cure for anything is salt water, whether it's tears, the sea, or sweat. And if you think of my aunt, she really was kind of the embodiment of all of that. And what a gift she was. She truly, truly was. And that leather strap has traveled with me all over the world, which, you know, my father's probably up there doing this. You shouldn't have given Carly Claire that bug, you know, to get on a plane. But she was truly a gift and such an inspiration, and so missed.
Thank you, Carly.
Hello. Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. I'm Jenny. I am Aunt Pat's niece, Pam's daughter. And unfortunately, my mom couldn't be here today, but she wrote a poem about my aunt that she read at the burial service. And I was hoping I could read it for you all today to sort of represent her today. It says, Patricia Ann Parish KUHN, my big sister. Princess, spirit and friend of native peoples, lover of the earth, sister, mother, grandmother, loving wife, friend of the birds, caregiver of the garden, friend of Jesus, traveler of the world, scientist, knowledge seeker, photojournalist, poet, historian, advocate for the downtrodden, conservationist, life enthusiast, adventurer, follower of light, friend to many. We love you. Your spirit stays with us. And I spent my spring breaks coming to visit Aunt Pat when I was little, and she would always have Easter egg hunts in the yard. She said, I can't bribe my children anymore to come and find Easter egg hunts, and I used to love to. So she would hide Easter eggs for me and take me all the places that were so special around here, the Brit Festival and the Shakespeare plays, and she always made every visit magical and wonderful, and every second I spent with her will be treasured forever.
Thank you, Jenny. Anybody else? Nope. All right, Adam.
I probably don't need a mic.
Okay.
Speak loudly. I'm Adam Calloway. Kent's my brother-in-law, and we're a master for some reason. My family moved to Medford in '74, I think. And, we were little kids. Well, I was. The very first people I think we met were the KUHN'S, because Pat said, look, we've got new neighbors. We gathered up Mike and Allison and trundled them across the street. We were directly across the street. And we met them. We were friends all growing up. And they're family. We did Thanksgivings and Christmases together, various other things. Telling Mike I will always be able to remember the sound of Pat and Rich laughing at those dinners. Those good things. The other is a funny bit I'll share is I sang with the chorale for a while, for quite a few years. And Pat would come to see the shows. And after the show, we'd all sort of, find our way, to meet our people out front. And Pat would wait there, and she would always tell me it was the best thing she'd ever heard. And that I looked like a movie star. So I had to chuckle all about the comments about the Pep Squad, because that's who she was.
Is it okay if I say something? I have a loud voice too. I'm sure you all can hear me. I can take the mic just in case. So I'm Allison's biological sister. My name's Amy, and I only had a chance to meet Pat on a few occasions, and I don't have a really great memory for specifics of things, but I do remember a quote that I can't remember who quoted this quote, but the quote goes, "You may not remember what was said or what was, what people said or what people did, but you'll always remember the way they made you feel." And I just know that the times that I was in Pat's presence, I absolutely felt welcomed and just, embraced in her warmth. And, for somebody who, didn't even know me, but knew that, her daughter was related to me, she just welcomed me into her life and her home, and the beauty of the person that she was just shone through from the first moment I met her. And so I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, of course. As I stand here, I'm very lucky. I mean, I am the luckiest, as far as I'm concerned, person in this world. Because, long story, but this is my biological daughter, Allison. And at one point in my life, I had to make a decision. And I believed in the Lord. And I wish he would have whispered in my ear the night that Allison was conceived, but he didn't, and I did something that changed my life in many, many ways. And one way that was so positive is the fact that after Allison was born, my parents couldn't accept her. They couldn't accept that their perfect daughter got herself pregnant and wasn't married. And frankly, they didn't even know the father that well. And he wanted nothing to do with me nor a baby, and denied that he even was the father. So now you kind of know the picture of the story. I had a big decision to make because I loved this person inside of me. I loved her I loved her before she was even thought of. I have always loved children. They are just the highlight of my life. I taught school for 40 years. Hopefully, I was a good influence on them, and they didn't have to walk the path that I had to walk very early in my life. But I want you to know that miracles happened to me that I didn't even realize were happening until I met my daughter's mother. I can't say enough wonderful things about this woman. I mean, she was 1 in a million, 1 in a trillion. I mean, there isn't a number to describe her because she was so special. It took 36 years of anguish for me to find my daughter. And to find her in such capable, wonderful arms was an answer to a prayer, because let me tell you, every year when her birthday came around, I couldn't even go to work that day. just worrying about where she was. But back in those days, you couldn't try to find your child. That was illegal. You signed a paper. You know, I mean, it was almost like signing in blood that, you know, you would never try to just, you know, because apparently some people had and abused it, or I don't know what the reasoning was, but there was never a choice. And I know even when I married my delightful husband, who was a wonderful, godly man, you would have thought that he was probably more of a caveman than a godly man, because he looked like a grizzly bear. And Allie will agree with you on that. I agree with me on that. But inside was a heart of gold. And I can remember him telling me, on our second date, I told him about Allison. We had no idea where she was or who had adopted her, but we knew she was adopted. And I had lived in South Dakota, and my parents just didn't want anything to do with it. So they shipped me to Portland, Oregon to live with my aunt and uncle until the baby was born. And then they made arrangements for an adoption agency to come and take her. I wasn't to see her, I wasn't to speak of this and if I brought her home, I wasn't welcome to come back to my home. And at 18 years of age, I wasn't ready to be a mother, but Pat was. And I am so happy. I am just so happy that Allison was raised by Pat and Rich, because I couldn't ask for anything better. And you know, it was a miracle. I couldn't try to find Allie, but Allie, according to Pat, from just a little girl, always was asked about this woman that was her mother, because they had explained, you know, that she was adopted and so on. And I mean, it's just a story that as it unravels, it just becomes better and better. And Allison grew up wanting to know who had birthed her mother was. And you notice I hesitate when I'm saying mother, because I wasn't her mother. I gave birth to her, but I wasn't her mother. I didn't ever have that privilege. But I did have the privilege of getting to know Pat, her mother. And I tell you, we are all lucky every single one of us in this room to have known her. She just made it so... I just can't describe it, but she just lifted the weight that I had carried for 36 years just off of me. She welcomed me into her home. She rejoiced in the fact that we had found each other and that we both had prayed and prayed for years that this could happen, and it did. And it was just wonderful. And I'm sorry to put a negative thing on this, but there was nothing negative about this woman. I'll tell you, I felt like she was sent. She was supposed to be Allison's mother. And I'm just thankful. I'm just thankful that I got to meet her.
We're gonna go for one more.
Thank you. Patricia was the world to many people. One story is part of what is on the table today. Pat and another friend of ours Sarah, and myself, we were in English class together, and we were writing poems and thought that, we really enjoyed the teacher and so forth. Well, the teacher encouraged us to keep writing, and we realized perhaps we could share our poems, and Pat and Sarah suggested, let's do a book. And we had the encouragement of the teacher, and this book is the result of our endeavors. We met every week. We shared what we had written. She was a driver. She made sure that we came to our meetings and that we were producing. And when it came to putting the book out and publishing, she was so instrumental in getting coverage and publicity and so many other things. And her voice was always beautiful. I can't describe it, but she had the passion in her voice, and it went into everything that she wrote. And it was our blessing to have been so much a part of her life and everything that you all know now about her. And so I love you, Pat.
My name's Kathy. I'm a friend of Allison, and I didn't have the privilege of knowing Pat as long as you guys did, most of you here. But I will always remember her for her John F. Kennedy story. She loved to tell that story, and I don't know how many times I heard it, but you knew it was true because it was the same every time. And your eyes would just light up when she told the story. But she always made you feel welcome. She was an awesome woman. She would get so excited just for us going to the beach on the horses, you know. She's gonna be blessed.
Yeah. And a special prayer.
And we will finish with the prayer Allison's going to read.
Heavenly Father, as we celebrate the life of Patricia KUHN, we are comforted knowing that today she is with you in paradise. You have created a new heaven and a new earth. Just as Patricia has passed from this world to the next, we know that you are there waiting for her with outstretched arms wide open. Comfort your people with the assurance of life. Amen.